Okay, you guys, as I promised, I am bringing the one and only Judith Hill, my number one favorite astrologer slash medical astrologer slash vocational astrologer. Judith Hill has been learning astrology since she was born, basically. She was been given readings since, well, your first professional reading was what, when you were 12 years old or 14 years old was your first paid professional astrology reading?
That's 14. Yeah. And yeah, I studied very intensely since I was 10. I had an apprenticeship, and then I began my first paid reading at 14.
That is incredible, Judith. It is such an honor to have you here. So, Judith, I'm going to ask you a question about how you feel the attitude towards astrology has changed since you were a youngin giving these readings. We know that astrology used to be illegal at one point, which is wild, and things really have changed. So can you just give me a little your feelings on that?
Astrology was illegal to practice in many states of the United States, and in California, of all places, our most liberal state, it was illegal until either 1980, somewhere between 1986 and 1989. It was legalized, and so you could be carted off to prison for practicing astrology.
Wow.
And yeah, we had to practice secretly, and it was always hanging over our head, and it was a disreputable career, and it was listed in the vocational guides under entertainment. And even 10 years ago, couldn't get credit card because they said it was placed under phone sex. And this is just, the most sacred science, and so deep and so rich. And this is going on. And a lot of misinformation, because medical astrology was always legal. And even in 1553, at the Tridentine Council of Pope John III, all natural astrology was deemed permissible by the church and God. And medical astrology is part of what we call natural astrology. And always a major part of medicine. We'll talk about that, until the late 1600s, all through the West and the Mediterranean and the Arabic, and in India as well, and horoscopic astrology. So we want to be very careful. We're talking astrology of using a chart with a wheel, signs, aspects, houses, planets.
Right, right. That's what's so fascinating to me, is that this was part of a physician's training. I mean, wasn't that legal? I mean, in order to legally practice medicine, they had to have training in astrology, right?
They had to pass their exams. They had to be very high level astrologers. In fact, we have many of the great astrologers of the 1600s in Britain were physicians, and they kept sometimes thousands of charts with diaries and notes on their medical cases. And so we had a system called astrologophysic, and it meant astrological medicine. And it was the system of medicine. So they had astrology combined with herbalism and patient examination, which included looking at the urine and the pulse of the tongue. They had all this. And this was the system practiced in all the way from ancient Greek times, but was the European system until it was deliberately, very quickly suppressed and besmirched and beaten into the ground right about late 1600s, early 1700s. And but it was and then their version of the FDA, which was the university trained physicians, they suddenly turned against it. And it was very big, strange thing. It has a lot to do with political factors, and with also money, and also with the new discoveries of the anatomy. And so you had people railing against it because Galen didn't know where the liver was, and so therefore astrology doesn't work. And the Earth is no longer the center of the universe, therefore astrology doesn't work, which is throwing out a very big baby with the bathwater.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. Yeah, that's what's so wild to me, but it's really nice to see it making somewhat of a comeback. I really just want my audience to know that I and everyone else to know how, your level of expertise on this. In my opinion, it's like you're the person who I've learned the most from, especially for medical astrology, vocational astrology as well. But I really want to focus on medical astrology today because that's what I feel is so important. And I was talking to Judith about this before we hit record, that personally, I feel like anybody could really benefit from understanding just the basics of this stuff, even if you don't want to be an astrologer, even if you don't want anything to do with being, in the medical field of anything, just to understand yourself, a little better and understand how to protect yourself, based on your natal chart. Does that make sense?
That totally makes sense.
Yeah.
It's very, very important.
So
And
go ahead.
well,
Go ahead.
no, it's your floor.
Okay. Okay. I was
I need a question to get me going. You pull a string and it'll unravel the sweater with me. So,
okay. So what I was going to ask is, how many books have you authored at this point, Judith?
oh my, I think I've authored 13. 11 are in print. One will come out this year, and the remaining one was accepted by a publisher 30 years ago, and there it has sat. Then they didn't have the money or something, and it's just sat there. So that there's that one. But yeah, there's 11 now in print, and one I did just for beginners. I actually have it on the table. Medical Astrology for Health Practitioners, the total layman's prequel to Medical Astrology, A Guide to Planetary Pathology, which is my one more for beginning astrologers. And then we've got many other, I've got 4 or 5 medical astrology books for different levels, covering everything. But yeah, this is just your little, I don't know astrology at all, and I want to get started. I just want some, you can dive right in and get started. Big thing on what to look for with the signs too, because the sun signs are types. They have a seasonal influence on their natives and often certain health tendencies that are good to know, sun, moon, or rising. And so, yeah, and there's some you can just find out where a certain planet is and get so much information about your basic health.
Yeah. I have gifted 2 friends that book right there. One because she graduated, I don't know if you've ever heard of 5 branches, but now she's licensed to do acupuncture. And her and I we're connecting and making all these, connecting the dots together really. And I'm telling her when's maybe a better time to be doing practice on the liver or practice on the feet and that sort of thing. And she really loves that book. And then another friend I gifted that book just because I know that's the thing, is that people don't know what medical astrology is. Maybe that's something that we should get into. There's so many questions I want to ask you, but on the surface, what's the best way to define medical astrology?
Well, there would be 2 definitions. Okay. There's medical astrology just in general, is the study of the horoscopic astrology, the birth chart, the natal chart. Right. So call it the radix, the root, and your transits and progressions. For your health weaknesses, your innate birth weaknesses, for diagnosis, for prognosis, how long something might last. And one of its best uses is for timing. So at the Academy, we've got a great course on fertility. We have a great course on timing of surgeries, safe surgeries, which is a real art form. And you can use it for tincturing. We have a great course on herbalism and herbal timing, when to tincture, when to start a treatment, when to harvest, and when to do remedials. Also, we have a great course on the upaye, the system of planetary antidotes through gems, and exactly when to use them and apply them. So you can also do what's called a decumbiture for the moment a person gets sick. Though personally, I'll be teaching that soon, but personally, I like natal charts and transits better. They work. But we have almost anything you want to use it for medical information, you can. And for legal purposes, I have to say, for our recording, it's all traditional and empirical and hypothetical, and we are not giving medical directives or advice. That is the province of your personal physician.
Yep. Yep. Well said. Yeah. I mean, really for myself, I've always been fascinated by astrology. I didn't really get super professional till, oh geez, I think it's been 8 years now since I really started going, this is incredible. I can't believe the accuracy that's coming with this, just astrology in and of itself. But then medical stuff, what I really noticed for myself, there was just my natal chart in and of itself, I don't have a very strong vital force, unfortunately. And I know obviously certain parts of my body that I need to pay a little extra attention to. But before I knew any of this stuff, I experienced a really, really severe, we'll just call it a blood disease, that my entire face right here, anybody who's used to my channel, maybe you've been around my channel for a long time, you can go back to my videos from 2016, my whole entire face blew up right here. I mean, it literally looked like I had 2 cantaloupes growing out of each side of my face.
Oh.
And lo and behold, I was experiencing progressions through my 6th house, all in the sign of Taurus.
Which rules that area.
That area. And that was the thing that made me go, okay, now I have to really learn more about this. And that's when I started really falling in love with your work and making sense of everything that I've been through in my own life, not just from psychological or astrology, which that's obviously profound as well, but the medical stuff really started blowing my mind. And being able, again, I just can't say it enough. I just wish that this was a field that was more recognized by the general public.
It will be. And one thing I want to point out, that the psychological astrology works by exactly the same principles that medical astrology does. And we do have a very good course on the astrology of mental health on the Academy. All of this, how the old ancient way of looking at the planets was through temperature and their moisture level that they imparted, their speed, and they also have peculiarities. So say Mars is always seen as hot and stimulating. Hence it's called hot, stimulating, drying. In water signs, it's hot and wet. And so if you have that energy excessive pouring into your mind, you become manic. You get insomnia, you have rages, you get violent, or you're just hyper energetic. You can't focus, or you just want to be muscular all the time. If you have it in your body, it can produce inflammation, accidents. It's the inflamer, and it can also produce many other things. So it's the same thing. And it hurts me that this has been lost. And anybody who knows how to look at the planets in their original way they were looked at has a tremendous they just have a tremendous assistance in any other kind of astrology they're reading, because they'll understand it energetically. And this is just so important. And I want to point out how old medical astrology is. Our first they found a wheel in the tomb of Ramses V, giving the body parts assigned to each ascendant rising. It's not quite the system we use today, but we know that we have then found a tablet in 30 BCE with zodiacal man. It was used all the way up until we're still using it. I have a book coming out on exactly on that next year. And Manilius in about 30 AD, he wrote the first exposition of zodiacal man, how the zodiac signs go down the body and what zones they rule in organs and things like that. But this really, really started being very developed later. But our first expositions of mental health in great detail we have from Ptolemy in 140 AD. we know he's copying a lot of his information from, far earlier sources. So, this is we had our first system of psychology and of medical description really very early in astrology.
Yeah, good point to bring that up. That's something that's also so significant. Let's see here. What else I've got a whole list of questions here for Judith, and I'm just trying to hit the most important points here.
I love questions.
One thing I should bring up while we're on it is your scientific research. You've got how many years of actually applied scientific research in the field of astrology?
When I was in the 1980s or 70s, I get lost. When I was young, I was about 21 to maybe 34. I was really, really into the scientific research of astrology with statistics and scientists involved, and we would get help. And I got into and did two very big studies. One was astroseismology, and we really got into that. And I have a book called Astroseismology, which you would have to contact me personally for that, because it's not on Amazon. It's a research compendium. And then we did the Redheads Research Project to see if it was really true that Mars had a special relationship to redheads. And we discovered so much. And that was a very, very, very lengthy project. And I gathered up 500 redheads, natural redheads, in groups of 100 each. We did it all right. We notarized our hypothesis. We had witnesses and a doctor present who signed them when we opened up all the data coming in, and it was done as right as we could do. And so then we had very fantastic results, and we got hold of a set of 100 redheads that was gathered by John Addy, 50, 100 years ago. He was long gone. And his results matched ours perfectly. And so then we got a big group in England. We gathered about 1,000 more redheads up in different batches. And some of them had a statistical significant result, and some of them just missed it, but all of them showed the redhead curve.
Yeah.
Mars in certain houses, much more prominent. So the redhead curve of Mars through the houses would look like this. And you take the same data and spin it around. So that's just normal people, no redheads. And the line just goes with a very, very slight rise like that. And so I have a book called Mars Redhead Files.
Yeah, I heard you talk about that book. I love that. And it's so funny too, because I have quite a few redheads in my family, and everything you've talked about that, I've applied it to their charts, and my brain explodes because it's so accurate. It's so fantastic. Honestly, I hold Judith, for anybody who's unfamiliar with Frau Lily Kalisko, I put Judith on that level, because what Frau Lily did was she was Rudolf Steiner's basically her most significant student. And she took his work and figured out, I don't know if we should really go into depth on that research, because it might take up a little bit of time. Please feel free if you'd like to, though, Judith.
No.
And she basically proved astrology worked. And then we had Nick Colostrum come into the picture and do the same thing over again. Do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, I'd love to. And before I do, I should mention that I don't want to leave people out, but I did the redheads research with Jacqueline Thompson. And I did the seismic research we were partners, Mark. These are research partnerships. Mark Pollitt, he's still my editor now, and wonderful guy. Anyway, so yeah, Frau Lily Kalisko. Now Steiner got this idea that if metals were put in salt solutions, that they would reflect planetary motion. So he told a chemist named Frau Lily Kalisko about this, and we were supposed to look up the years. I think it's 1920s or 30s, and I think she was doing this all the way through the 50s or 60s.
Yep.
50s.
Yep.
And so she started. She would take she took the metals that were assigned to each planet traditionally. So iron phosphate is assigned to Mars, which Mars is iron, and reduce it into a solution. And so she had each planet has its traditional metal. So Jupiter's tin, Moon is silver, sun is gold, Venus is copper, and Saturn is lead, and Mercury is mercury. So she would wait till the moon, she got this great idea, wait till the moon would conjoin these planets in the sky. And then she would look at what would happen with their metal. She would dip a filter paper into the metal. Every time she did this, within 10 minutes following the conjunction, the metal would go crazy all over the paper. And there has been some other studies done too. There's been a few other studies that really show improved astrology. So this is the most remarkable thing, because we have metals all through our bodies, and it could explain the Mars redhead effect too, because redhead is made from a type of iron.
Yeah.
Redheads, and so are freckles. Redheads have actually more iron around them, and why they're born when Mars is in certain places. So, we're getting somehow the ancients knew what metals were associated with planets, because they always gave iron to Mars. But it was only in, I think, the 60s or something that we discovered that Mars is covered with iron. That's why it's red.
Well, isn't it true too that female babies are born with more copper in their blood and male babies are born with more iron in their blood, like something like 20% more or something?
30% more.
30%. Jeez.
And then how do we make electricity? We in the old days, they would thrust an iron bar through a copper coil.
Right.
So the astrologers, they knew things that we're finding out, or they knew things about Saturn too that we're just finding out now.
Right. It really is incredible. And just to be clear, for anybody who doesn't know what I'm talking about, Mars is masculine, and that's that energy of being born with more iron in the blood, with the Mars masculine energy versus Venetian energy. Venus energy is more of a feminine energy. And that's where the copper is going to come in. I figured some people are going to be like, what are they talking about that for? But yeah, it really is profound research.
Well, and we should talk about that book, but another example of this is, the energy of the planet. So Mars either penetrates from the outer into the body, or it penetrates from the inner body outward. So Mars rules all, your excretions. And so you can always see if your excretions are stuffed up, causing the problem. But Venus is relaxing. She has a curve wave, and she's relaxing and pain relieving, whereas Mars causes pain. And so, Venus is what we call anodyne. She's pain relieving, and she's normalizing. So that's why some of the old books would say she was cool, and some of the old books would say she was warm, because she's warm if you need her, and she's cool if she's like a cool mint julep on a summer's day if you need her, and she's like a warm little pair of mittens if you're too cold. She normalizes the body, so she rules the sign of the scales, equalizing. That's the job of the kidneys, Libra, equalizing it, the acid alkaline, everything. So it's very deep and very also immediately useful. This astrologo physic, or astrological medicine. So I want to say, one thing I wanted to go into, Aaron, because you asked the question earlier. So when asked what is medical astrology, we have, the use of the chart, for your looking at the prognosis, diagnosis, remedies. But astrological medicine is also another meaning of it. It is a total system of medicine that, was going on all the way up from ancient Greek times to the present. And again, use of the horoscope, transits, progressions, herbology, patient examination. Was that the Western, also the Middle Eastern and Indian parts of their medical system, and in Europe, the medical system of the Renaissance. And so it's also a medical system, as is Chinese, traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, and it is a very significant medical system. And astrology was the crown jewel. It was used to tell what you had like 13 different etiologies, or what could cause a problem. And the astrology was used to tell which of them there were. And one of those etiologies was planetary influences were causing the disease. And as Aaron probably has seen, they can. It's just being ignored by modern medicine.
Yeah, yeah. And why don't you tell us about the symbol when somebody gets a prescription, the little RX that's on the prescription? Doesn't that originally mean I've seen your horoscope? The
That
rate?
is one, that is one, you know, I get flack for this. There are many theories of how that happened.
Okay.
But one of them that I read, it's a very popular theory, and it makes sense. They always called the chart the radix,
Right.
and that's the symbol of radix. And they would always study, they would try to study the natal chart if they could get it, or a decumbiture.
Right.
And then they would figure out what was wrong and what remedy was needed. And then they would make a prescription and put RX on the bottom. Some people think it's a symbol of one of the Egyptian healing gods or something like that. And other people think it has another meaning. But that is one of the traditional hypotheses. So nobody really knows. I did get a letter, raging against my interpretation, but that is one of the hypotheses out there.
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah. Well, yeah, it just makes sense to me. It really does. Okay, so let's see. You did mention briefly herbs, and that, your work with Matthew Woods is just profound. It really is just so amazing. And so do you think it's fair to say that we could use herbal remedies in order to not only prevent disease, and of course, we're speaking hypothetically here, to not only prevent disease, but also to heal somebody from disease? If we can see through the chart, this looks like this might be getting triggered from the nervous system, from one of the nervous systems. Are there certain herbs that we could use based on medical astrology, the astringent herbs versus, that sort of thing? Do you think it's safe to say we can apply that to this field?
I have to answer that with my little
Right.
waiver, which is I'm not a medical doctor.
Right.
And so your medical doctor must remain your authority. And everything that's coming out of my mouth is traditional for your educational enjoyment and wonderment, and hypothetical. I'm not giving anybody medical advice or directives. But in my personal opinion, which I'm free to have, and things I've witnessed empirically for years, the horoscope, the radix, and the transits absolutely, this is my opinion, will show what's going on often when nobody else can figure it out, and will also hint at the remedials. And what Erin says here, you then decide if, do you need an astringent? Do you need a stimulant? Do you need a specific? Some herbs are very specific. Do you need an anodine? Or do you need just some exercise, or to pet a dog or something? And we actually have a very complete astrological herbal course on the Academy.
Yeah.
It's called Astrological Herbalism Decoded. And
Yeah. Yeah.
and we're putting in more. We're putting in more. There's also a really good 1 hour lecture on the herbs. It's called 12 signs, 30 herbs, something like that. It gives 3 herbs that are very useful for the tendencies of each zodiac sign, that if you're having the problem and you have a prominence there. And yes, so my experience has been absolutely yes, Erin, on everything you said.
Yep. Yeah. That I was at the original lecture for that. That was at Norwalk, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that is such a helpful lecture. I kid you not, you guys. Again, I can't say it enough. Even if you have because I really do feel like most of my audience is here because they want to understand. Some people might just be stepping into the field of astrology, wanting to understand it. And some people, I feel like, might be on a path to wanting to become an astrologer themselves. And I really do feel like Judith's Academy is great for anybody who, even again, just the basics and just starting out step by step by step and learning the basics of the herbs. I'm still certainly not at the level I want to be at as far as educated goes with the herbs. I'm getting there though. And your book, what is it? Medical Astrology in Action. That's a beautiful book. Yeah.
That's this one.
Yep.
And it's, if you want to know about the actual transit effects, and a huge emphasis on the nodes too. And this is a more advanced book, and it's very thorough. We keep learning though all the time. I always go, why didn't I put that in there? But one thing we have probably extremely just an extremely comprehensive nodal track at the Academy. No, the lunar nodes and eclipses, not all medical, but including their medical transit and natal influences, but also just in general use. It's a very, very comprehensive track.
Yeah, when Judith is talking about the nodes, I think that's part of the reason why I fell so deeply, passionately in love with your work, is because you put so much emphasis on the nodes. And to me, they are so incredibly fascinating to learn about. And I think you're the only one who I can find information who's really applying the nodes to medical, right? Is that?
I actually, I mean, I'm not tooting my horn, but it's just true. I believe I'm the first to document certain aspects of the medical nodes, and certainly bring a very comprehensive view of the nodes, not just good, bad, but a really comprehensive view of the nodes that includes medical to literature. I mean, you just don't find anything this comprehensive. I found one book written about the same time as my book from India that is comprehensive. And I haven't found anything else. You'll get more, it's good, it's bad, or it's past and future, but it's simple all through the medieval era. Oh my goodness. I can't turn that off. The phone.
Oh,
It's going to ring 7 times, folks.
I don't even hear it.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay. So I had really been studying the nodes, the transit nodes over your planets, the transit nodes to your transit planets, to your natal nodes, and your natal to your natal. And my book, The Lunar Nodes, goes into all of these and the lunar nodes and their influence in medicine and death and physical appearance, in the houses and the signs. And nodes have so many rich meanings. They don't just mean one thing. Yep. And you have to learn how to assess them. But the lunar node, north node, is where things come in. Yeah. The south node is where things go out. That's why it's the head and the tail. And I always, the south node is the great anus of the zodiac. It is. It's where things leave. And so if you understand this, again, energetically, then you see how physically the north node is where there's a buildup, and the south node is where there's an excretion or a deficiency, things leaking out. So the north node, it can bring you wealth. It also can bring you a tumor, and this, the south node, can bring, a weak spot, but it also can bring you sleep and convalescence and rest, or a good time to dump out garbage. Yeah. So if you understand things energetically, you always find a good use for a difficult aspect, a good energy flow for it. And you always can see where a good aspect can go bad. How many of you have been expecting Jupiter to bring you some wonderful thing, and instead you just gained 100 pounds, or your husband's railing around the house being a real problem? He's too Jupiterian at home. So it isn't always good. Yeah. We humans like good, bad thinking. Yeah. And I think energetically, and I totally believe some things are bad, that can hurt you. But I think energetically, and therefore when you're confronted with somebody who's going to have Saturn sitting on their moon for 2 years, right? You can give them some interesting, ways to deal with that, both antidote and some, something that would go with that energy. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And just to be clear, the book that Judith is talking about is The Lunar Nodes, Your Key to Excellent Chart Interpretation. Definitely one of my favorite books, and it really does go into depth. And the nodes are just mind-blowing, especially once you get a little familiar with this stuff and you get to watch them through transits and the eclipses. That's another book to mention here. Eclipses and You. This is another one that's going to talk about the nodes and how hands down, you're right. They're really, it's energetically that they can even the, like you were mentioning Jupiter, the great benefic, and Venus, which is so lovely, they can still bring, Jupiter, like you said, can make people fat or give somebody a fatty liver or something like that. And Venus can give somebody diabetes. The North Node is said to be, where I've heard astrologers just refer to the North Node as our destiny, which I can see that connection there, but there's so much more to it. It can make somebody greedy, or it can, bring, say, I don't know, North Node sitting right on top of somebody's Pluto and Libra, bringing toxic energy into the kidneys, something along those lines. So it's so much more than just your destiny. That's why I feel like your school and your books are just, I don't know, again, mind-blowing.
Well, we should mention the academy is called the Academy for Astrological Medicine.
Yes.
But we do have tracks on nodes, eclipses, and on vocation. Big focus on medicine and also astrological herbology. But if you can't remember that, you can go to judithhillastrology.com and press the Academy button.
Yeah. That's how I always get there. As soon as I type J into any of my devices, it automatically takes me to your website. But another thing, I know you got to get going here, Judith, but another thing we have to mention here before you do is your charts, your wall charts.
Oh, the wall charts. Oh, thank you, Erin.
You're so welcome. So this is just one of them right here. I got another one right here. It's probably gonna be really impossible for you guys to see what's going on here, but especially for a beginner, they can be so helpful. And it's just a little cheat sheet for understanding this stuff. And me, as somebody who's been studying this stuff in depth, really medical astrology, I think it's been about 4 years that I've been really diving deep into this stuff, but it's still just handy to have right here when I'm giving a reading to make sure I don't forget something about Neptune or whatever it is.
And they come real big too. I've got real big ones and I've got medium ones, and then there's one on the 4 elements, and the zodiacal man, that's the first zodiacal man side view in the history of zodiacal man.
Yep.
And the first zodiacal man in the history of zodiacal man, with everything that each sign rules going around the side. And it's very comprehensive. So I thought, what's needed? These old medieval drawings would just show, guts exposed, and a ram pointing somewhere, or kidneys pointing somewhere, and not all the detail of what Libra rules. So these are really, really useful to that. And then the other one is the planetary rulerships, and we have I have a list of, you have the metal, the gem, the herb categories, the vitamins and minerals, the body parts, and vocations, people and things, all on one page.
Yes, all on one page. Super, super. And you can get those wall charts on the Academy website, but you can also just, again, go to judithhillastrology.com. Yeah.
Yeah, you'll get them at judithhillastrology.com, and you'll see a little button that says wall charts, and it'll take you to astrologywallcharts.com,
Yeah,
which is another website where you get them.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, Judith's Academy. Not only that, but there's a forum where you can go on if you're enrolled in the school and ask questions and, just learn. It's a whole wealth of knowledge through your academy. So we are so lucky to have you, have built this academy, Judith. It's really incredible.
Oh, thank you. Oh, and we also have the data research and exchange.
Right.
So if you're looking for medical astrology charts of a certain, like you want to look up diabetes, some people have loaded just all kinds of cases on there, and you can do your own research. And so we're really encouraging that. And I that might be open to everybody. I'm not sure. And we have a monthly Q&A for the subscribers. You don't have to subscribe. There's plenty of things you can get without subscribing, but the subscribers get a free Q&A. And every month I come on and I answer their questions, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, those are really fun. I love the Q&As. Those are my favorite. So, okay, well, I want to let Judith get on with her day because I know you are a very busy woman, but is there anything else you want to add to this?
Well, did we cover everything that you had wanted to ask me?
I think so. I've been going through the list and looking at things and just kind of making sure we covered all the main points. I think maybe I didn't mention the book when we were talking about Frau Lily Kalisko. The book is right here. This is The Metal Planet Relationship by this book is by Nick Collerstrom. And it took me close to 2.5 years to get that book because it's out of print. And I think what I ended up doing, I was checking every, couple of days on eBay and Amazon and anywhere I could possibly buy a book. And I finally put a notification in my eBay account saying, send me an email if this book goes up for sale. And they did. And I bought it within, I think, a half an hour of it being posted. But that's something else, because we said we wanted to touch on that book. And let's see here. I think we covered everything. I mean, we did talk about, the onset and the decumberature chart and the natal chart.
What the uses of medical astrology. We could cover that a little bit.
Sure, absolutely. I just don't want to be respectful of your time, but please.
I'm fine. I gave this, we can stand as long as you want. I gave this till 2:00 today, so I'm fine. And the use of applications, I'll just read it out of my little book here.
Oh, good.
Yes, I won't forget. So you can define, using, this is just from your natal chart with some transits in some of these. You can define the type, amount, and strength of a patient's innate vital force, select safe surgery dates, find the seat of chronic disease. That's so important. Identify the seat of inflammation, where inflammation might be, diagnose the cause of mysterious symptoms, comprehending adjunct causes contributive to a disease process, such as a person may have several reasons that are going on, assisting with fertility and conception, selecting dates for cesarean section, knowing when to release a patient from the hospital. This is ever so important. You don't just go and release a patient from the hospital who's about to have their son quincunx their son just when they're about to take a little dive. Identifying length of illness and mortal potential. That was a really important use to the medieval, because people died so frequently. Assessing doctor-patient harmony and disharmony. And there's only section in any literature in this book on how to do it anywhere. Selecting appropriate herbs or treatments. Identifying a patient's innate weaknesses and strengths in the body, or you can just say yourself. Assessing etiological category. Is the disease of physical, psychological, or supernatural origin? This was something we talk about. We have a lecture on the Academy that was taken very, very seriously until about 1700. And let's see, well, actually longer for the witch hunts. Let's see, understanding your patient's needs. And this book goes into that a bit. Best times for providing for herbal harvest, decoction, and administration. Alert you as to when a problem is far more dangerous than you would otherwise know. And I have personally many stories where astrological medicine has saved lives, when the doctors didn't see it coming and the alert was given. Determining the onset of menarche, that's the end, beginning of a girl's menstrual cycle, or of menopause, selecting the right surgeon, and I've got instructions here, and also for the doctor to select the right patient so they aren't constantly not able to heal them or they get sued. You need to have a harmony. Being alert to individual patient idiosyncrasy and reaction, such as if you have an Aries, you can expect their head to go crazy in fevers or brain radiation or whatever you're doing with the head. It just goes crazy with most Aries natives. Not everybody, always exceptions. Being prepared for collective health trends. And we have a guide in here as well. Those are just some of the things that astrological medicine is useful for, as well as assisting in psychological, like what's causing a depression. The person gets under Saturn, Neptune, the South Node for too long. They're all of a sudden lurching off into a depression. What to do about it. Very helpful.
Yeah. I'm glad that you went through that, because that is exactly what I think people needed to hear, is how helpful this stuff can be. And, you know, it all started with just looking at myself and studying astrology for my own natal chart, and then applying it to other people's lives around me, and figuring out why everybody is their own unique version. As I mentioned, this, you know, this stuff that showed up on my face many years ago, you know, looking at my siblings, we all kind of had the same, you know, ate the same kinds of food, lived the same kinds of lives. I'm thinking, why me? Why is this going on with me? And then to be able to look at it and figure out why was just, that in and of itself was a relief to, you know, and then being able to, oh, okay, maybe I'll start detoxing when the moon starts waxing, and then I'll take it to the next level and, you know, try these different herbs that Judith is talking about, and was able to really fully heal myself from that. You know, are you familiar at all with Dolores Cannon?
I'm not.
Okay, she was fantastic. She's no longer with us, but one of her famous quotes was, "The ultimate goal of on the physical plane is to know yourself."
Oh, that's lovely.
I know it. I feel like it's so spot on and so true. And I feel like there's so many people that, again, just even if you want to know yourself, just understand yourself, why things have happened, when they've happened, and that sort of thing. But I don't want anybody to feel intimidated or overwhelmed because it is pretty detailed.
You have to, I mean, we will be putting in a course on some very basic astrology, but as the little beginner book, you don't have to know anything but how to spot where the planets are, what signs they're in your chart, to get some very basic good information for medical astrology.
Yeah.
You know, such as you know, where's your Saturn? That's just going to tell you a world of information. So it is detailed. You need to know how to, you know, your basic way around the chart, but it's also very mechanical. Yeah. And in some ways a lot easier than the new kinds of astrology where people are interpreting or trying to come up with psychological interpretations for what they're seeing, because this is very, oh, this means this. You know, Mars is hot, Saturn is cold, Uranus is spasmic. And how would that affect my mind? How would that affect my body? Or what's going on in my life? Mm-hmm. You know, it goes all the way through. I don't separate medical, Erin, from other types of astrology. It is the basis for other astrology. It's the cosmic rays. It's the study of each planet emits a color ray. Yeah. And we'll work through the signs. It's the science of the vibrations of the rays and the colors and the temperatures. And you can't separate this. It's, you know, spirit, mind, emotions, body, they are all influenced sometimes. Like if you get in a froth about something for a very long time, you know, just really angry because someone called you a name, and you stay in this state, you will amp up your adrenal glands. You will have a muscle spasm, or you'll get an inflammation, or you'll get an ulcer or pancreatitis eventually, because you're constantly revving. So Mars, you know, it goes through layers. And sometimes a planet will just hit the body without going through the layers. How do I know that? Because I've watched animals respond to planets just as well as people. Or people too, you know, Mars can go into a sign and all of a sudden, you know, when you study this, you'll feel it. Yeah. And it doesn't have to go through your mind or emotions first. I don't always blame health problems on a person's psychological state. So people say, oh, you get cancer because you're holding on to all this toxic stuff. Not necessarily. Some animals just get cancer. Yeah. You can be the nicest pie and just get cancer. In astrology and life, there's always an exception to every rule. Yeah. You know, nothing is always. You just get, you know, trends. So you have to keep your eye on both. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of my favorite things that you teach as well, is that there's always exceptions to it. Just because let's say your Saturn is in Pisces, which Saturn constricts, you know, is cold and stiffening and that sort of thing, and Pisces rules the feet. Just because somebody's born with Saturn and Pisces, there's a strong tendency that they might have feet problems, bunions, something like that. But it doesn't mean for sure. There's so many other little aspects that come off of this, right?
Yeah, you have to see, their own chart, what it means, or, people call me and they'll say, well, I'm an Aries and I've never had any problems with my head.
Right.
Well, because you're an Aries who never had any problems with your head. And then, you have, people that come in with problems in the upper head or eyes, you will see problems in Aries. It works that way. It doesn't work all the time, but if you study that Aries person who's telling you they never have any problems with their heads, you will find that the Aries energy will be working. Maybe they've got a very incredibly good vision.
Yeah.
That's good Aries. Maybe their hair is very strong and brightly colored, or there'll be energy here in all Aries. You sense it, and you start studying people. I have that book on the body types. You start studying hundreds and hundreds of people. For many years, you'll see these types. You'll see, 3 of your friends are Aries, and they remind you of each other. They're a similar type, and they're acting alike. Most Aries have sort of a positive zing about them and are quite playful, eager to laugh, not negative toned. And all you have to do, here's a test. Take 3 Virgo friends out to dinner. You know this one, Erin?
I do.
Take 3 Virgo friends out to dinner. Then take 3 Pisces friends out to dinner. You will notice a profound difference, because one is the sympathetic nerves and one's the parasympathetic. So the Virgos will pick and fuss over the food. They will not finish their dinner. They will take it home or just leave it on the plate. Eat little amounts, and I can't eat this, I can't eat that. And the Pisces will eat everything, laugh and sing, have 3 helpings, go home and sleep it off.
Totally. It's so true. And that's the perfect example. And by the way, this is the book that Judith is talking about, the astrological body types, which is another very, very helpful book, especially if you're new to this stuff and you want to start studying your friends so that you can really get to the bottom of this. And yeah, it's so spot on and so true. And yeah, there's definitely, I know one person. I mean, I think I've probably given, I don't even know how many charts I have in my system at this point. I think I probably have close to 2,000 charts in my system, other people's natal charts. So I've either given them readings or they're just somebody, a friend of mine, or, whatever, that sort of thing. One out of all of those that does not fit her chart, one that I'm maybe I could send her chart to you sometime and see what am I missing here. But other than that, you can just see it. You can just, especially once you start interacting with somebody and you study them and that sort of thing. And I'm obviously not trying to be nosy about somebody's life, but it's.
I'm going to give you a story. Okay. I had a client come in and I never met her. She didn't fit her chart at all. It doesn't fit the chart, but I realized she would fit a chart 2 hours earlier quite well. And I said, I think you're born 2 hours. They'd given you a time 2 hours late. No, that's the right time. She was insistent. I said, I know this is wrong. And I tried to read the chart. It didn't fit her at all. She's disappointed. She leaves. She calls me about a month later and she says, you're right. I got hold of a birth record. I'm born 2 hours earlier.
That's so good. That's so good. That's fantastic. Actually, that leads me into one more question, because some people unfortunately don't know what time they were born. And so, I mean, personally, I love working with the houses, but I think I've heard you say it before that the planets tend to be more prominent than the houses. And I definitely agree with that, but I also really like working with the houses. But do you feel like medical astrology and I know the answer to this, but I would love for you to tell people, do you feel like medical astrology can still be applied without knowing what time you were born?
Absolutely. It will not be as pinpoint accurate, but vocational can too. I've done a lot of readings for people who just knew their day. And you can do a chart with the moon as the ascendant.
Oh,
that's how they do it in India. If you know just the moon sign, if you don't know that, you can also use the sun as the ascendant. But if you want houses, they'll work about half as good as an ascendant. We basically have 3 centers in the chart: sun, moon, rising. But the planets in the signs, and then you can get it down to the third of the sign they're in, the decanate. The planets in the signs, they will tell you a great deal of. That's why this book is so, you don't really need to be an astrologer. This is for health practitioners, not astrologers, this book. It's how can I do this if I know almost nothing? All you need to know is the symbols. Learn your symbols and learn to tell what sign they're in. And a lot of printouts will show you that. So just by knowing the sign of your Saturn, usually will tell you where something is too tight, too cold, the circulation may be blocked, you may not be getting enough nutrients, or it may be too hard. Saturn is hardening. It pulls out. Here's an interesting one, Aaron. It's always from ancient times ruled astringent, meaning pulling towards center, and pressure. They just recently discovered that Saturn has so much pressure on it that at its surface, it's something like 100 or 1,000 times more pressure than at the bottom of the Earth's ocean.
I have heard you mention that before.
And pressure on it. And that's always been its effect on the body. So it can produce, you've got a place that needs warmth or needs stimulation or needs opening up or needs more nutrition. Just that alone. And it works very, very well. And you can do the same thing with the other planets, just instantly. And you of course match them to, you have to find out what's wrong with the person. But here's a funny story I've told before. You might have heard. Erin's on in the academy, and so she hears a lot of this. But I was hanging around a astrological conference, and Andy Gertz comes running out. She's another medical astrologer, but she also does readings of all kinds. She comes running out. She goes, "You got to meet this friend of mine. He's a total skeptic. He's a total skeptic." I said, well, "Okay." And he's standing outside, and he's like all grumpy, and he doesn't believe in astrology, right? What's he doing at this astrology conference? I don't know. But she says, see what you can do. So I said, "Where's your Saturn?" And he said, "In Sagittarius." I said, "Have you ever broken your femur?" He says, "Yes, I did. I broke my femur." And he didn't know what to make out of this. Well, not everybody, as you know, Aaron, will break their femur but it was a lucky guess. But then there was the workman that came to the house. You know that story?
Yeah, I love it. Tell it.
Sorry. Oh my God. So this workman comes to the house and he's looking around. He sees my book, Astrological Body Types. Of course, he didn't know I wrote it. And he goes, "What's that?" And I said, "Oh, Astrology Body Types." And so he's leaving and he goes to the door and he whirls around and looks at me. And he basically doesn't believe in astrology. He told me that. And he had this little hat on. He's built, like Mick Jagger, a V with little skinny, tiny legs. And he's kind of buff, very muscular, and he's very confident. And he says, "So, guess what sign I am?" And I remembered that everybody who does that is a Leo. So that was my lucky guess. But he also was shaped. He's a type that you see in Leo a great deal. Muscular, handsome body, the littler body and the bigger shoulders. And I said, "Well, I'm not sure. I'd have to know you better, but I'd guess Leo." And he said, "I am a Leo." And he honestly looked like a sack of beans just hit him over the head. And he was so stunned. He turned around and just walked away. He didn't even say goodbye. But I thought that was one of my finest moments.
I love it. I love it. I do. I have one that's similar. I used to give readings at this wonderful little herb shop in downtown Santa Cruz. And it was just kind of an informal thing. Somebody would, they came in, no appointments to be made. They just were strolling around the store. "Oh, astrology reading. Yeah, okay, well, let's talk for 15 minutes or whatever." But I had these two girls come in that were, I would say, somewhere around 20, 25 years old. And they were very, they were giggly towards each other and that sort of thing. But, astrology readings. "Oh, okay. Oh, can you guess what our signs are?" And I said the same thing. I have to talk to you a little bit. But then they said, "Well, it's really obvious. We're both really obvious." And I said, "Okay, Gemini, Pisces," and their jaws dropped. It was so fun.
That's one of the best stories I've ever heard.
Yeah, it was really fun, especially because the girls who were working in the store were all there to see it. That was a rewarding moment for sure. But yeah,
we can't always do this, folks. These are somewhat lucky guesses because it could have been she had Pisces rising, Pisces moon, and it was a Taurus. But It was a bit lucky. But I've noticed beginners are better at this than I am now.
Oh, I can. Okay, sure.
Yeah, I start thinking too much. Was it but beginners just often nail it. Someone once nailed me, and it blew my mind when I was on a trip. But it's just interesting.
Yeah.
But that's fantastic, Erin. That you got two. It's like two at once.
Yep, right up. But I wouldn't have guessed it if they didn't say it was obvious. It was the colors that they were wearing, the way they were interacting together. The Pisces looked very flowy, and just gentle, and then the Gemini was chitter chatter, and it was really fun moment. So yeah.
That's just that's priceless. That's when they'll tell their grandchildren about one day.
I hope so. I hope so. Oh, Judith, it has been so fun talking with you. I truly, like you, just are the joy to my life. You have taught me so much. And I really hope that, this field just starts to expand and to the point where it just becomes a norm and we're not thought of as entertainers, or for crying out loud. What did you say you were? A porn, like
they lopped us in the same category as phone sex workers, and when so I couldn't. They wouldn't give me a credit card. They wouldn't give me a credit card account. Yeah, this goes on, and the field is expanding and growing, and there are many people now using astrology for everything, and medical astrology is making a comeback. And as Culpepper said,
yeah.
A physician without astrology is like a pudding without fat.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. Yeah. I've heard you say that so many times, and it's so true. It is so true. So anyway, you are the one on the top of my list anyway, who's bringing this stuff back into the world, and hopefully just this, and even recording in and of itself, can get more people to, buy your books and just keep it growing, like you said.
Well, we do have plenty of beginner stuff. We have Medical Astrology 101. I've had that course for 12 years now. Plenty of beginner material, both a la carte, some free, or you can subscribe and have over 1,000 hours of material right now, and growing all the time on the Academy for Astrological Medicine. And yeah, well, Erin, this was just so pleasant and nice, and I really enjoyed it.
Good.
I love any good opportunity to share, especially with someone like you who is really serious about this field, and really a professional herself. So this is wonderful.
Thank you so much, Judith. Thank you so much. And I guess I'm going to let you go, because now we're 1 minute after 2:00. Okay. Well,
Right.
Judith, we'll be in touch soon. Okay.
Thank you, Erin, and bye, folks.
Okay. Bye-bye.